freedom when I saw that bright sunrise. I drove up to Chama as the wild angel fire chased out the dark from the skies. I was part of that holy splendor sent from God's own mouth above. The only way we're gonna make it on through is if we start embracing fierce love. Oh, aching hearts, can you find some balm in the sunrise and the road? The pavement still winds through the mountains up in northern New Mexico, and the sun will still rise up tomorrow through all of your heartache and pain. And the cracks in our world will let in the light that we have been missing. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, it's been a while. Hi. So many things have happened, right? Let's just take the breath here. I think what Mindy gave us in terms of what we're going to be talking about this morning was a great introduction. Sometimes I just need to take a breath. Will you take one with me? Just a cleansing breath. Breathing in, and then exhale, and then one more, and exhale. So I'm really grateful to be back here with you all. Every time I come through Salt Lake, I ask if I can come and speak or sing. And this time when I asked if I could sing, it had already been assigned, which is great because it's all in alignment. Things have really changed in my life, and I'm sure that they have in yours too. It seems like things have sped up. Doesn't it seem like things are just flying by? I used to live in Los Angeles. Before Los Angeles, I lived in New York City. I was in Lion King for almost 5 years. I did Smokey Joe's Cafe, Jesus Christ Superstar, and all of those great theatrical expressions, if you will, that you put on stage, Broadway. And I lived in Los Angeles for about 12 years, and I remember doing the church circuit, because I used to go and speak at churches all over the United States. As a matter of fact, I think I've been to at least 90% of centers for spiritual living in the United States. I've been everywhere. That was my call, so to speak, for over a decade. And I remember it was December 31st, 2015. And I was in my room, and there were fireworks going on. I was in Los Angeles at the time, and normally I would be at Agape bringing the new year in or at some kind of retreat, and I thought, this year I'm going to be right here in my room. I'm going to stay at home. And I sat down on my bed, and I went into this meditative state, and it felt like the walls in my room were just closing in on me. And I said, there's something to this. What is trying to speak to me now? And I got it. It's time to go. It's time to leave LA. The first thought that comes to my mind is, well, let's just go back to New York. You know New York. You want to go back to Broadway now. You think you are ready. And I said, great. Let's go. Let's plan. I'm good at planning. I think we're good at planning. So I say, okay, June 2016 is going to be the month that I pack my little buggy up and move on back to New York. Well, June came, and I got invited to go to Jamaica. So I went to Jamaica the first week of June, and I did a series of forgiveness workshops there, artistic workshops, and I come back to LA, and it seems like everything is new. Like I'm living in a whole new world again. I believe in this kind of transition, the crossing of thresholds. But this one? Been here for 12 years, and this all seems different to me. And I go into meditation to find out how can I get clear on what's trying to speak to me, because something is trying to tell me something. And I hear, well, you're not going to be moving in June. I said, okay. I said, when? I said, listen, and you'll know. August, I think it was the third weekend in August, I go to Sacramento. And I'm speaking and singing at a church, and I get home that night. And right before I go to sleep, I go into meditation, grateful for the time that I had. And I heard the most direct, you're leaving Wednesday morning at 6 o'clock. Wednesday at 6. Wednesday at 6 it is. Now, you have to understand that I have taken these directives for years. This intuitive rebel, as I call myself, I've listened to this for such a long time. Being born in the South to a controlling mother and the baby by over a decade on my father's side, where everything is, you've got your life pretty much made out by the age of 5. He's going to be a preacher. He's going to be a business. I've had to learn to listen and trust. So I said, Wednesday at 6 it is. I put my things in storage, those things that I don't think are expedient right now for me to take. And then I pack up everything, and 4 o'clock Wednesday morning, I'm up. And I'm in silence. I'm still listening. And at 6 o'clock, I'm headed back to New York City. About an hour and a half into that journey, there is a release. Something happens, and I began to weep. Not cry, but just weep. Because yes, I've heard. Yes, I've trusted. But there's always that small kernel of fear. God, I hope I am in the right direction and on path with my divine destiny. And then it breaks. And all I can do is say, I'm too far down the rabbit hole to turn back. I'm going. From Nashville, Tennessee originally, and on the way to New York, I thought, well, maybe I'll just stop in Nashville for a brief moment. I'd been doing forgiveness and emotional literacy work and learning work for years. Been in all kind of correctional facilities, prisons, schools, from 3rd grade all the way up to. And so I'd written a curriculum. I knew how important emotional literacy and learning was to me because it was the byproduct of this entire life of forgiving my father. So I stop in Nashville. My sister's selling the house, the last house that my parents lived in. My father had transitioned. This house was special, though. It was on the plot of land that my father grew up on. It was adjacent to the plot of land where my beloved grandmother lived. Now, I grew up with Granny. Brother was 15 years older than me. My sister 11 years older. Both of my parents worked. I'd stay with Granny. She was a self-taught pianist. She used to teach me these hymns and spirituals, anthems. I'd try my best to get out of the learning sessions. But she'd say, son, come over and listen. Had this raspy, out-of-tune alto voice. Sit in the front room, as she called it. The front room was the living room, the bedroom, a big pot-belly stove, and everything else you could think of that was in there. And she'd open her mouth and she'd say, great is thy faithfulness, O God, my Father. There is no shadow of turning with thee. Thou changest not, thy compassions, they fail not. As thou hast been and forever will be. Great is thy faithfulness. And I would look up at my grandmother. Her head would be tilted back and tears would be streaming down her face. Now, at the age of 3 and 4 years old, I didn't know what was happening to Granny. So I'd tap her on the knee and say, Granny, Granny, are you okay? My grandmother didn't talk a lot. She'd just nod her head that Granny was just fine. So all of these memories come back to the forefront of my intention as I look at this house. It's the last frontier before I go back to New York. But I have about 3 weeks to sit, reminisce, take some time before I make it to the Big Apple. And during that time, I go into meditation and they hear the voice of something say, why don't you take your curriculum to the Nashville public school system and see if they'd be interested? Well, I've gotten into these other places, but the public school system? Do you know how hard? Just do it. I make an appointment with the student support coordinator, one of the top executives in the Metropolitan Nashville public school system. And I go in and I'm going through all of these parts of the program. We have mindfulness, creative journaling, nature, all the things that I think would really benefit students in learning how to navigate those tough crannies, those nooks where they feel like triggers are their only escape to fight or flight. Those things that I had to deal with. And while I am telling him this, he is on the phone and he gets off the phone and interrupts my little spiel and he says, Charles, you have an appointment with the elementary school teacher. He's actually a principal now at Fall Hamilton School. He thinks they would really love your work. Next Wednesday, can you make it? And I say, yes. I go in, and the principal has done some research on me. He says, well, I knew you were coming, so I rounded up my toughest 3rd and 4th graders I thought you could really help. I said, okay, I'm ready. So he takes me into the room. Chaos. They're running around, chasing one another. All these boys. And amongst and above all the chatter, he says, hey, y'all, I want to introduce you to Mr. Holt. He's going to be here working with us. By that time, one of the youngsters, 3rd grader, runs up to me and grabs my shirt like this. And it says, Mr. Holt? I say, yes. He said, will you come over here and see what we've created? And before I could say yes, my mind looks at him right in his eyes, and I go back to my childhood. I remember that because that's the way I used to grab my daddy. Daddy, Daddy, will you come outside and play ball with me? Will you take me to the store with you, Daddy? Can I eat with you? My father was old school, born in 1925. And there were certain things that my father did not agree to. Touching was one thing. Little boys don't go around touching people. Shoo shoo, he would say. I don't have time to go out and play anything with you because it's the weekend and I'm going to be with my friends. You cannot eat with me, you talk too much. If you sit quietly, I might let you. Well, this was interesting to me because he was everything. I wanted to be just like him. Walk like him, talk like him, put my elbows on the kitchen table and eat just like my daddy. And so with every no, you can't, go away, there was this buildup. And by the age of 8, I thought I'd come up with it. I think I've got it. 3rd grader. I need to change. Something's not working here. So let me be quiet, not say a word, and go on with his plan. And at every turn, it was the same thing. I became a celebrated athlete. I thought, well, sooner or later, he's going to come to see me play football. Everybody's talking about me. I'm in the newspaper for something almost every week. And by the age of 13, 14, and 15, I had waxed cold of even trying to attempt to get his validation, his approval. So in my mind, I thought, I'm on my own. Of course, my mother and my grandmother will always champion what I do. But it was his word that I needed to hear the most. So I began to resent my father. And sooner or later, I began to hate him. Hate is a strong word for me. Wherever he is in the house, I'm on the other end. If I hear him coming towards me, I'm on my way to the other side. Just didn't want to be around him. I graduate from college. I get a job at IBM, and I think by this time he has come around. After all, I'm a man now. I'm out on my own. I got my job, my apartment. I'm living my own life. But the only thing that he has to say about my becoming a rep at IBM was, that's nice. And in order for me to thwart those attempts to become so angry and spin out, I would look for the next opportunity to upgrade. The next accomplishment. The next accolade. And so my mid-20s was very important to me. I decided to move to New York. I wanted to be on Broadway. Corporate America didn't work. That was my mother's dream. I really felt like I was on my own now. But I was ready to listen. Ready to listen to something. So I left for New York, $400 in my pocket. My mother told me to go see a psychiatrist before I left, that I had lost my mind. And I told her, I said, I will, Mom. The only thing is, I've got to go. There's something there, even if it's not Broadway, that's pulling me. I have to go. Landed in New York, July 6, 1996. A month later, I got Jesus Christ Superstar. My career took off. And I thought in my mind, yes, I have landed, and I'm far away from him. And during the tour, something happened where my father comes to visit me in an apparition. I go through a tirade of questioning. I thought I left you in Nashville. Why are you coming to visit me now? You never cared anything about me. You really never cared anything about our relationship. And I get the impulse to call him. Call him now. And I call and he picks up the phone. And I say, Daddy, do you remember when you said this about me? Do you remember when you did this? Do you remember all of these things that you said? And my father said something, one of the most important things that anyone could ever hear, but I didn't want to hear it that time. He said, I'm sorry. I don't remember saying any of that stuff. You got the wrong person. It was at that moment that I was invited into this sacred agreement, because I cried and I cried and I cried. And this was after I told him. I said, Daddy, I forgive you and I love you. My father was silent. And so Spirit, as I call it now, comes to me and says, congratulations on your sacred covenant. I said, he didn't say anything. He didn't even acknowledge it. And all I heard was, it wasn't for him. It was for you. That was January 1997. 2009, my father is now been diagnosed with end-stage renal disease. I spent that time, that whole lineage, every time I'd see him, I'd keep that sacred covenant. Daddy, I love you. And every time I'd get the same answer. And I go home in 2009 to help fray some of the responsibilities of having him get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to dialysis. And he comes in at 11 o'clock in the morning. My mother has his breakfast on the table. He has a huge shawl with him. Says it just makes me so cold. And the man that used to stand tall as a redwood is now bent over, shuffling down the hallway. And I'm behind him as he makes his way back to his room. And all of a sudden, he turns to me. And he looks at me. And he smiles. And he says, there's my baby. Daddy loves you. And it seemed like an eternity just in that moment. I looked at him. And there was that part of me that was still angry. Where was that when I was 3, 4, and 5 years old and I begged you just to touch me? To let me know that I was alive. That's the kind of power that you had. When I was 13, 14, and 15 years old, I was trying to decide what my life could look like. Where were you? And in a striking opposition, I heard that voice say, remember the covenant? He's ready now. Are you? And I said, yes. Yes. And I looked at him and I said, oh, I love you too, Daddy. My father transitioned in 2013, but before he left, he cried. He wept. And while I watched him transition, I knew, if nothing else, that all of this that I had gotten in my meditation, I knew that there was another realm to speak in. And I said, Daddy, I know you can't talk to me like this, so tell me, what was this all about? And he said, I loved you from the day that I saw you. I couldn't tell you how you wanted me to. I couldn't tell you that I was proud of you, son. I was, and I did my best, but nobody ever told me. Nobody. And I'll be with you wherever you go now. I promise. He said, and do me one favor. He said, don't stop telling them. Don't stop teaching them that they can get through it just like we did. And I come back to the room where that little boy is still holding my shirt. Mr. Holt! And I look at him, and I don't see him anymore. I see me. Will you come and look at what we've created? And I said, absolutely. I go over, and in my pace I hear, but what about Broadway? Yes, I said, Broadway can wait. I've got work to do. I started a 501c3 called the Open Frames Project. January of 2019 will be my first college to go into and do this work with not only the students but the faculty. What I do know, if I know nothing else, is that we're ready to heal. And in the healness is forgiveness. It's the letting go. It's the release of all that no longer serves us, because sooner or later somebody's going to come up to us and go, Mr. Holt, Mr. Holt. And we got to be ready to let it go. That's what this is all about. This life is more about letting go than it is getting or gaining. So we let go to get back to who we truly are. Let's take the breath here. Another one. I invite you now that you get that one. The one that Mindy talked about. The one that you thought you would take to your grave. And whatever it is that you do today, start it. It's not too late. It's not too late to say, Spirit, I surrender. And part of my surrender is letting go. I no longer hold them in prison, knowing that I hold myself too. There is something that is after us. Something wants to emerge through us that is so powerful that it really does change and transform everything around us. We're so contagious. And in the yes, it all unfolds. The continued yes. Even though that voice comes back and says, but what about? What about? And then there's that voice that says that, what if? What if I let it go? What if I forgive? What if I forgive myself? What will happen? That's my invitation today to you and to myself as we continue together to journey through this mystical life that we call divine. It is grand, it is glorious, it is magnificent, and it is marvelous. And it is the life of God. Thank you for your time. This divine knowing, right where we are, God is there, peace is there, joy is there, abundance is there, the willingness to be more than we have ever been, the courage to cross thresholds, to move through, and the clarity to see dry ground through muddy water. It's right here and right now because it is the essence of who and what we are. I say yes to this. I say yes to this. As we move through and become more, never less of who and what we are, we allow the stories to fall off as we create this new book, this new chapter in our lives, the unfolding good. Father, Mother God, Divine Spirit, eternal wisdom, all that there is, how great, how great, how great thou art. Oh, how magnificent, wonderful, marvelous, grand, glorious thou art. How I give great thanks for this life eternal. And what we have heard and what has been said and what has been spoken under the tongue, beyond the ear, beyond any sensory, goes straight to the inner sanctum, that place where deep meets deep, soul to soul. How wonderful, how magnificent, how great. Oh God, how thankful I bask in this gratitude that everything that I need, and I speak for everyone under the sound of my voice, everything that I need, I have to fulfill what I've come down here to reveal and demonstrate how thankful and grateful I am. I pray for this center. I give great thanks for the Center for Spiritual Living here in Salt Lake City. I pray for the leadership. Yes, the leadership is founded in love, in grace and beauty. Yes, I send high thoughts to this great city. Let it rain. God, let it rain. Blessings so that we can clear the dust of the past. How wonderful it is to be here, right now. I give great thanks for this knowing, for all of the way shores, the avatars, the angels, the holy angels, the ancestral lineage, the ancestors. Oh yes, all of our teachers. Comfort, discomfort, comfort, discomfort leads into our greater yet to be. For this and so much more, I let it be, and so it is.